30th April 1943, Huelva, Spain, Aero 9 to 30 hours. A fisherman spots a body drifting near La Bota Beach. The corpse wears a Royal Marines uniform and carries a briefcase, cuffed to the wrist. Spanish authorities recover the man and the case. A rumor outruns the paperwork. An officer lost at sea, a satchel that cannot be opened, and a war that turns on documents more often than people admit. The man's name, to anyone who asks, is Major William Martin, Royal Marines. His rank is plausible, his age average, his wallet convincing. Theater ticket stubs, dry cleaning tags, a letter from a fiancée named Pam, a bank statement with a small overdraft, a stern note about unpaid club dues. The documents make a life that no spy would script. That, precisely, is the point. Weeks earlier in London, a small group inside British intelligence searched for a way to redirect German strength away from Sicily. The strategic picture is stark. The island is the obvious target for an Allied invasion of southern Europe. Obvious targets attract obvious defenses. The question is whether a dead man can carry a different answer to the enemy, and whether the enemy will believe it. The mechanics are cold. A homeless Welshman died in London. His body was released to the authorities. In death, he becomes Major Martin. Identity papers are crafted. Letters are drafted in the undramatic rhythms of bureaucracy and love. A photograph of Pam goes into the wallet. A theater ticket and a bill go into the pockets. A chain and handcuff join wrist to briefcase. Doctors prepare the body to suggest a crash at sea. The plan is simple to state and brutal to execute. Let the tide deliver a convincing story to a neutral shore where German intelligence has eyes and influence. Spanish officials, aware of diplomatic theater and wary of British pressure, examine the items. The briefcase is sealed, then unsealed, then resealed by hands not formally present in the log. Copies of its contents make their way along the chain that matters. Local contacts, Abwehr, Berlin. The papers point to an Allied landing in Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily. They even discuss cover operations around Sicily to disguise the true target. It is the kind of candor that convinces. A perfect lie wears a hint of truth as camouflage. In London, the room that conceived the plan waits and measures without admitting that it is waiting. Signals traffic changes tone. German command questions its assumptions. Reconnaissance patterns shift. In the Mediterranean, the balance moves by increments that are easy to miss if you do not know what to count. A redistribution of aircraft, additional mines laid where they will not be needed, an attention deficit applied to the place that matters most. On the ground in Spain, the story advances through small human acts. A coroner signs a paper. A clerk moves a folder. A Spanish officer speaks carefully to British diplomats while describing procedures he cannot control. The body of Major Martin is buried with honors. The British attaché attends. A cross bears a name that never lived and a rank that never served. The grave is real, even if the man is a fiction. The file leaves Spain in more than one form. A copy travels to Berlin. There, staff officers read what they expected to read, without realizing they always hoped to see it written down. The weight of the briefcase is not leather and paper. It is plausibility arranged with such care that disbelief becomes work. If the enemy wants you to think of Sicily as a feint, perhaps Sicily is a feint. If a dead man carries the message carelessly, perhaps it was not meant for you. The argument persuades because it arrives as an accident, not a presentation. This is not a caper. It is a supply problem solved backwards. Build the story first. Then find the man to carry it. Then choose the tide to deliver it. Then shape reactions you cannot own. The operational art is restraint. The letters are light on drama. The banking details are boring. The love note is ordinary. Too much cleverness would smell like a stage. The effect depends on the dull thud of routine. The German response becomes visible in the only way that matters: movements. Forces that could have reinforced Sicily face elsewhere. Air assets redistribute. Fortification priorities adjust. On maps in London, pins move just enough to add confidence to an invasion plan that already carried risk and momentum. The test of deception is not applause. It is a change in the math of someone else's defense. The man who never lived continues to live in documents. British officials write letters to his family. The Naval Intelligence Department publishes a notice of death. A handful of officers carry the knowledge of who he really was and what he was made to do. The grave in Huelva becomes a marker for a war fought with paper and tide as much as with steel. When Allied troops go for Sicily, they bleed less than they would have. The island still resists, and real men still die on real hills. Deception does not win a battle. It shortens one and shifts its cost. After-action reports and foreign archives compiled long after the war make the case that the briefcase's journey bent German preparations towards the wrong places at the right time. Skeptics point to the complexity of war and the danger of clean narratives. They are right to be careful. No single ruse changes a theater by itself. But the pattern is consistent. A dead officer carried papers that enemy analysts read as genuine. The enemy acted on those papers. And Sicily was not the most reinforced island it could have been. The rest is precisely what a sober documentary values: timelines, logs, and conservative claims. The power of this story is not romance, but the craft that hides under it. A love letter without a purple sentence. A bank account slightly short. A photograph that does not perform. Cigarette cards in a pocket. A key that scuffs a fold. Gloves that remember handling. When the Spanish opened the case and repackaged it for the British, when the Germans made photographs and copies, the details passed their inspection because they were not inspection traps. They were life carried forward on paper. There is an aftermath for the body as well as for the plan. The Welshman who became Major Martin receives a name on a headstone. Later, the name beneath the name is acknowledged quietly in records that no longer need to keep the secret with the same ferocity. The officers who built the story move on to other work or to silence. The file grows thin as the war moves past it. What endures is the clarity of the mechanics. You can point to a date. 30th April 1943. You can point to a place. Huelva. You can point to a chain of custody, a set of photographs, a sequence of diplomatic notes, an intelligence digest stamped and rooted. You can read the German reaction in their deployments, and you can trace the human scale: a tide, a beach, a fisherman, a briefcase, and a decision in Berlin that tilted resources away from an island waiting for invasion. The lesson is unsentimental. When a problem resists force, try fiction. That is true enough to pass for truth. The British did not ask a story to win Sicily. They asked it to bend preparations just enough to reduce loss. It did. That is the value worth counting, and it is the reason this episode returns whenever people speak about deception with respect rather than with spectacle. The larger war turned on factories and fuel, pilots and sailors, weather and luck. But on certain mornings, it turned on paper. A man with no future acquired one long enough to deliver a set of pages into the hands that needed to hold them. The deception worked because it asked for belief at the level of habit, not passion. The reader in Berlin believed what he wanted to believe, and what the papers suggested was safe to believe. That is how a dead man moved an army. If this made the mechanics feel real, if the tide, the chain of custody, and the cautious hands on the briefcase added up to something you could see, tell us where to go next. The Norwegian fjords, where miniature submarines crept under a great battleship. A city where couriers built an underground route out of a death camp, or back to the Pacific, where tiny ships forced giants to turn. The same measured tone will meet you there. Names, minutes, and the quiet details that change outcomes.